were always good before.
I will call this regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council to order. You have the agenda before you. Any additions or deletions? Hearing none, we'll deem the agenda as approved and go down to council announcements. Any announcements of any upcoming things? Councilor Thorburn.
Just a couple, Your Worship. Actually, the town's birthday, February the 13th, 6:30 to 8:30 at Bridgewater Museum, 130 Jubilee Road. The town will be hosting a free concert featuring Hank Middleton and collage to celebrate the town's 121st birthday. So please join us at the museum in the newly expanded exhibit gallery for the event. Free cake, all welcome to attend. So everybody here tonight, I want to see you on Thursday night. And on February the 14th and 28th, 2 p.m., Bridgewater Museum, join Sandra Mailman. She's going to have a fun afternoon as she instructs you in line dancing. She will bring the music and the dance step sheets. You just bring your dancing shoes. $5 for adult, kids are free. And there's an heirloom talk and tea on February the 15th, 2 p.m., Bridgewater Museum. Bring a family heirloom for sharing its story. Jenny Bell will share a selection of her vintage fashion collections. All participants will enjoy a cup of tea and cookies. Tickets $7 each. Seats are limited. Please purchase your tickets in advance. That's it for tonight. Thank you.
Any other announcements from council? All right, moving along. We have a couple of delegations that I know we're early, but they're here. So I'd like to welcome Maddox and Eric to come down to the podium from Scolaire de la Rive Sud and the Lego team to talk to us about bees.
Good evening. My name is Eric. I'm in 6th grade.
Good evening. My name is Maddox, and I'm in 5th grade.
We are members of the first LEGO League from Centre Scolaire de la Rive Sud. We are participating in the LEGO Provincials competition at Acadia University. This year, the theme is City Shapers. Besides building and programming a robot, each team must identify a world problem related to the theme. Each team must design a solution.
We chose to work on the disappearance of bees, which is why we are here today. We have a problem. The bees are disappearing. Maybe we're wondering why this is a problem we must concern ourselves about. The answer is simple. Without bees, there will be no people, and without people, there will be no towns, no municipalities or cities.
We did some research and have some facts to share with you. In the U.S., 30% of the bee population dies every year. In Europe, 20% of the bee population dies every year. Some private beekeepers sometimes lose up to 90% of their bees. In 1947, there were approximately 5.9 million bees. In 2008, there were only 2.44 million bees. In Europe, the production of honey has gone from 32,000 tons to only 9,000 tons. The members of our team also mentioned that when they were younger, there were bees in the flowers, and now there are very few.
If the bees disappear completely, 1/3 of the food we eat will be gone, as many plants depend on the bees for pollination. Here's a video we would like to share with you.
Some even claim that if they go extinct, humanity would be next. So with the dramatic decline in bee population, should we be worried? What happens if the bees all die? Simply put, if a plant produces a flower, you can bet that bees help them reproduce. This long-standing working relationship evolved with flowers being bright and fragrant to attract bees, and the bees' fuzzy, Velcro-like bodies helping them to efficiently transfer pollen from the male part of the plant to the female part. This seemingly simple mechanism is directly responsible for the production of 70% of fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts we consume on a daily basis. 70%, which translates into almost $200 billion in global agriculture revenue. This huge responsibility is accomplished by droves of commercial bees reared by professional beekeepers for the sole purpose of being transported to farms or orchards to pollinate crops. But since 2006, these hard-working, busy bees have been mysteriously disappearing. This colony collapse disorder has seen an average of 1/3 of commercial bees abandoning their hives. In fact, some beekeepers have even reported that 90% of their bees have simply buzzed off. In some colonies, mites, viruses, and parasites have been to blame, but many are now looking at a class of insecticides called neonicotinoids. This neurotoxin is used to kill off crop-eating insects and pests, but also affects the central nervous system of bees when they consume contaminated nectar. And since nectar is brought back to hives, the entire colony can be affected, leading to mass confusion and disorientation. On top of this, other factors such as extremely cold and long winters, a lack of genetic diversity in commercial bees, and less variable nectar in the fields may be at fault. If the trend continues, entire food chains and webs may be at risk. Take almond plants, for example. The hulls of these nuts are used as feed for farm cattle and chickens. Fewer bees means fewer almonds, which could mean declining livestock and ultimately less milk, cheese, eggs, and meat production. Not to mention, almonds are used in cereal, baking, and many other food products. Beef and dairy cows would also be partially affected by the vanishing alfalfa fields, which are used to harvest hay for cattle. Looking for that morning buzz? Considering bees pollinate Coffea arabica, whose seeds we grind for coffee, you can count that out. Without bees, our diets would consist of mostly corn, wheat, and rice, as they are wind-pollinated plants. Like your clothes, not only is cotton the biggest cash crop in the U.S., it also makes up about 35% of the world's fiber use. So you can forget about those blue jeans, towels, mattresses, and high-quality paper products. Simply put, we'd be living in a completely different world without bees, not to mention suffering a substantial economic strain from their disappearance. So while we may not necessarily go extinct should the downward trend persist, a world without the buzz of bees would definitely stink. Want a free copy of our new book? Now you can get one from Auto.
We are here to ask that you prepare a pollinator action plan. This plan could include A. Educating your citizens about the disappearance of bees through pamphlets and what families can do in their own backyard to help. We have with us a handout which we have sent home to all the families at our school. B. Banning pesticides that contain neonicotinoids. This is an important step as these pesticides are very dangerous to bees. C. Having more pollinator-friendly places in public gardens with flowers and that bees and other pollinators like.
D. Installing bee hotels in public spaces. The type of bees which live in these hotels, mason bees. Mason bees are solitary. The males do not have a stinger, and the females will not sting only if trapped or squeezed. This makes them an ideal neighbor for the home garden, since they pose little to no threat of stinging. Having the recreation department organize information sessions about the disappearance of bees, which include the construction of a bee hotel for the home. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Please help us save the bees. As we said in our presentation at the NSCC, it is our business to help the bees stay in their business. We have a bag of seeds for you, which you can use for a pollinator garden.
Well, I think they deserve a round of applause. Now, will you take any questions? If there's questions from members of council? Any questions? Now, Councillor Frazier, do you still have bees in your...
Had bees, yeah.
You had bees?
Well, they're hibernating.
They're hibernating. So, Councillor Frazier, I believe your husband is cultivating bees.
We're trying. I know the first year they didn't survive. So there is lots of variables, as you mentioned, about pesticides and trying to work with that.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. We have a community gardens coordinator. Maybe that's what you were going to mention, but and we can pass this information on to them to ensure that we educate the public. Councillor Graves.
I love the idea of a pollinator action plan. I think that's great. What is a bee hotel?
Well, a bee hotel it's an open face birdhouse, but then you can have different things in it for like mason bees, butterflies,
Wasps.
ladybugs,
Okay, cool.
and a lot of other things.
Okay.
And then it's just, well, to help.
We can send you a picture. Unfortunately, the coaches were not quite organized tonight, and we forgot the Bee Hotel, because the kids did build one.
Okay.
And so my husband actually has a picture that he can show you. So it's just very simple. You can just take logs and drill holes in them. It's really, really simple, so we apologize to the boys.
Which I was supposed to remember tonight.
Yeah, no worries.
Late.
Cool. Councillor Thurban.
I do know, my wife has a garden, and the last few years, there haven't been that many bees around, but she must have planted a few plants that like bees, because last year there was quite a few, so that's encouraging. So if everybody can plant a few flowers, that gives the bees a place to go. And thank you, guys. Great presentation. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, very informative, and as I said, we'll pass that information on to our community gardens coordinator, so that maybe, well, we have your contact information, so maybe she can reach out, and we'll maybe put together the action plan. So, great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is from the Bridgewater Tennis Club. Request for assistance for resurfacing the courts. So whoever is representing the tennis club, if you want to come forward to the podium. And thank you again to Maddox and Eric for that great presentation.
Good evening, honorable members. My name is Evan Monahan. I'm the president of the Bridgewater Tennis Club, but I also have with me the vice president, John, and also Sam, who's our treasurer. And we have a couple of our youth members who are going to speak when I'm done my presentation here. So we are coming to you at a time of crisis for our club. And so I have a little presentation to deliver, and hopefully you'll be able to help us with our crisis. So for those of you that don't know a little bit about the history of our club, it was established in 1890. So 2020 will be the 130th anniversary. And we boast about this. We're the second oldest club in Canada, tennis club in Canada. We had a Maritime Provinces Lady Champion, Miss Olive Owen, in 1910, 11, and 13. So we have a rich history. The club has been situated in Bridgewater for that long. It's moved around a little bit in Bridgewater, but it's been situated in Bridgewater for that period of time. It started off on the corner of Maple and Alexandra, and it was originally grass courts. And in 1910, it was converted to clay courts. There were 4 of them. Today, for those of you that aren't aware, we occupy the corner of Kinsman Field. And presently, we have 3 asphalt courts that are lighted, and we have a clubhouse that also has electrical and plumbing. So that's where we're sitting now. A little bit more background about our club. And again, we call it a club, but I don't want people to get the impression that we're exclusive, because that is not the case. If you look at our rates, it's very affordable. A family membership is $175, and there's no limit on the family members. An adult member and a youth member are $75 a piece, and doubles, which is 2 adults living in the same dwelling, is $100. So we're very accessible and very affordable. We are not exclusive in that sense, but we need a little bit of money to keep our organization running, and so that's kind of what we get from our membership prices there. Now, for that price, let me give you a little bit of background. We get 8 months of play mostly for our adults, so that's spring, summer, and fall. You can play all the way into December most of the time. And we've even had crazy adults go out sometimes in January in the snow. We often leave a net up all year for those that want to get out and play in the snow. Our youth members, the $75, it doesn't really tell you all that we offer. The $75 offers lessons Monday through Friday for the entire summer for $75. So it really is a service that we provide to the community. For those of you that don't pay attention to tennis, tennis growth has been huge over the past several years. We have a lot of national interest due to our elite tennis players on the world level, on the world stage, that have been doing phenomenal things, including a Canadian champion at a Grand Slam last year, the first ever. And we've also had a provincial investment. We're part of the NSTA, Nova Scotia Tennis Association. And our membership has gained yearly for the past 6 years. Just to highlight too, we currently have approximately 150 members. Now, for those of you, again, that aren't aware of the location, we're on Kinsman Field, a former swamp. As you can see, as the result of the location, the freeze-thaw cycle, which also, unfortunately, wreaks havoc on our streets, wreaks havoc on our tennis courts. And you can see the results in those pictures. Next one too. And then on another court that we have there. So every year there's a lot of heaving that happens, which damages the courts. And on this particular surface, you can see the paint is actually lifting off the surface. So it not only looks not pleasant, but it also makes it dangerous to play on, especially if it gets a little wet. Our fences also are in need of repair. This past spring, there was some vandalism at our courts, and it basically meant that we had to leave the courts open all summer, which we did, and that wasn't a problem. But the fencing all around the courts, which basically keeps the balls in, it's kind of an important thing. You don't chase balls all over the place. Are moving so much that they're becoming useless. Essentially, they don't keep the balls in the way they used to. So it's been a progression since I've been involved with the club, a slow progression of decline, and we're almost to the point now where we won't be able to offer our services anymore. There's our clubhouse, and I would like to say that we're proud of the look of it. We're proud of the fact that we have a clubhouse, but as you can see from that picture, it's not a very inviting place. And though our membership has grown year over year, basically the facility is getting to a point where we can't sustain that growth, and I would imagine that we would start to lose members just by the state of that facility. It's starting to become a safety issue as well, and like I said, if we can't find something to help us with that, then the chances of us being able to offer these services are going to be severely limited. So what we're looking for is some help to repair our current location. There had been plans of us moving to Generations Active Park, which obviously is put on hold for 5 years. The courts in their current state won't last for 5 years. So, in the meantime, we need to repair them. Specifically, courts 1 and 2 need some repairs. You saw the pictures in the first slide of the fence, the posts, the tennis court posts, heaving, and the cracks in the courts. We need some clubhouse repairs. The deck needs to be replaced for safety purposes. The fencing, as I mentioned, and court 3 was the court where all the paint was coming off that you saw pictures of. That's the court, though, that it stands alone, and there's possible multi-use function for that court. That's a court that could be left open, and basketball courts could be added to it, which would further service the community. So we've costed this out. Basically, the cost to repair the courts 1 and 2 are $37,200 essentially. $32,200 just for court 3, as you saw, it was in pretty bad shape. Approximate repairs to the clubhouse, about $10,000. Possible multi-use basketball for the 3rd court as well, and that would cost about $1,500 for each of the areas that you have basketball around. fencing repairs, and a contingency. We're looking at a total project cost of $92,380. Now, how are we gonna achieve this? Obviously, we didn't come here to ask you for $92,380. We are applying for a recreation facility grant that will fund up to 1/3 of the project. And we're asking the town of Bridgewater for a slice, and we've already asked the municipality, the District of Lunenburg, and we're looking at some private sector donations. Bridgewater Tennis Club has a modest $6,000 to offer to the project as well, and that is what we have. That's everything we have. So 129 summers of tennis and counting. Can we afford to allow the historic club to crumble and vanish? Thank you very much. Now, before we get to questions, and we will take your questions, I do have a couple of youth members here who want to take a minute to express what the club means to them. This is Olivia.
I go to the tennis club every day in the summer. I get to spend time with my friends from school and learn to play tennis too. I love tennis tournaments when we get to play against kids from other clubs. I hope the club can stay open.
Mrs. Spencer.
I really like sports that require quick thinking and fast motions. I like the tennis club because it gives my sister and I a place to go hang out and have fun with friends while learning lessons about how to become a great player. If the courts aren't maintained and the club has to close, it would be very sad because I wouldn't be able to play one of my favorite sports.
Thank you very much for allowing us to present. And again, I do want to reiterate that we are a club, but really in the summertime we're a community. And as you can see, there are several members of our community here in support of us tonight, and many more who couldn't make it tonight. And I don't know if I can use this word, but I think some people here would be dependent on the club in the summertime. It really is a place for people to come together in the summer.
Great, thank you. Questions from members of council? Councilor Griggs.
The courts, is asphalt the best surface for, with the frost? With
Is
the frost
asphalt the best surface? Probably not in the long run. And in fact, if we make the move to Generations Active Park, we were looking at a different surface type. Different surface type would be more accessible for our elderly players. But currently, if we're staying where we are for the next 5 years, we've already got the base, so yes, it would make the most sense to keep where we are.
So things like clay doesn't...
Again, if we move, when we make the move,
Yeah.
we would be looking at potentially a different surface type that would be probably better in the long run. But where we are now, we've already got the base for the asphalt, so it doesn't make sense to tear that up and start
Okay.
scratch.
Councilor Thorburn.
3 or 4 points. Number one, back in, I think, 1980 to 85, I lived on York Street, and Phoebe McLean might have been president at that time. Some of you may remember. And I was part of the telephone company that volunteered to go down and put the poles and the lights up for the tennis club. That was back in the early 80s. We went down weekends and nights and done it on our own free time because there was no lights. That's part A. Part B of the story is I come home one night after supper and there was a barbecue on my deck. And I said, where'd that come from? Phoebe McLean had bought a barbecue for us for helping out with the tennis court. Important information. And if you're going to do that third court over, which I think we should, it would be nice to see if those courts are upgraded because they could be used as outdoor pickleball courts. As many of you know, pickleball is a growing sport, probably the fastest growing sport in the world, not just in Nova Scotia, which it is, or Canada, which it is. So repurposing that seems to make sense. And in that third court, along with including basketball, that there should be allowance made for a couple of pickleball courts. As many of you know, the 55 national games this summer in Kamloops, and we're playing on outdoor courts. And we don't have any in Bridgewater right now to practice on, so I see that as a major concern for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McGinnis.
Trying not to be negative, because I think they're a very, very important asset for the town. To me, the due structure seems pretty light. If you're paying $75 for the summer, to play tennis, and you have free lessons, everything included. Compared to other sports, it seems to me like it's a little light. And I don't know how that compares to other courts. You maybe don't even have that information.
I do, yeah, I can talk to you about that.
Is the membership increasing, or is it holding steady, or is it dropping?
So, okay, to your first point, our membership fees are on par with other clubs in the region. So we have Mahone Bay, Lunenburg, Liverpool. Our membership fees are on par with those. And to your second question, our membership has been increasing year over year for the past 6 years. We're up to almost 150 members. So when I became president 6.5 years ago, we were unfortunately down to as low as 30 members. So we've increased significantly in the past 6 years. And that is in no small part due to the people that we have on staff. There's a couple of guys you can see in that picture there who several years ago ran the program. That's an older picture, but the youth program is top notch, and that doesn't even speak to the adult program, who's run by Jamie Heim over here. It's grown leaps and bounds. So we have the right people with the right passion. We just don't have the right facility right now.
Just one more supplementary, if I may.
Yep.
Who owns the club? The members, or is it, who owns the land? Did the town give it to them, lease it, or?
The land is owned by the town. If I remember correctly, we pay $1 a year to lease it. So it is town owned. Yeah.
Councilor Frazier?
Yeah, I just like to attest to the program. Both my children have been, I think, if I go back about 10 years, I've been playing at Bridgewater Town Club. So I know I've seen the club grow in the memberships, and I give kudos to Evan and your staff for growing the youth and inclusive to all ages, because I think that's important, and being affordable for families is a great feature as well. I know you're saying it's on par with other clubs, but I think I just want to say you've done a great job in growing the membership, because I've seen that with my own kids, and it offers a lot for our youth here. Thank you.
If I could just kind of piggyback on that, I appreciate that. Thank you. One thing that I didn't really talk about in the presentation is that during the summer, it's not just you go for your lessons and then you have to go home, right? There's kids that are there all day, right? So we're providing a place for kids to come where they have a community and they can play, and it's not all tennis. They're doing lots of other things, but it's a place for kids to go and be outside and have recreation. And you really can't put a price on that, but the $75, again, we're a not-for-profit in the truest sense of the word. We're not trying to make money. We're not trying to, we're trying to make it accessible. My goal when I became president was to bring tennis back to Bridgewater. I didn't want, I grew up playing tennis. I grew up playing tennis tournaments in Bridgewater, and I wanted to see it return to that. And we're not there yet, but we're working our way there. So, again, we're not in it to make money. We're really not. We're in it for the sport, and hopefully the kids you see in those pictures there will bring their kids to the club too.
My question is actually for Councilor Thorburn. If there was an opportunity for that third court to be used for something like pickleball, recognizing how busy it is, I think you play 10 days a week, and I know it is growing leaps and bounds. Is that a stream of funding that is there as a potential for the tennis club? Like, people would, I'm assuming, pay to rent that court.
You're correct on both counts. I play 10 days a week,
At least.
sometimes twice a day. But I, for the past 2 years, have joined the tennis club in Liverpool. I think it's $50 for the summer to go up there and play pickleball 3 nights a week. So yes, it is a revenue stream that could take place. And I think Jamie and Becky did try that a couple of years ago. But at that time, pickleball was just starting out. I don't think the aptitude was there to play outdoors. some of the older members sooner play inside. But we did try it for a year or so, and then we just didn't have enough to play. So, yeah, it's really, I figure, quite viable now because we're running out of spots to play. Michelin's just, there's no time slots left for us to play.
So there might be some value in this presentation also being given to
Yep.
the local pickleball association or groups.
Absolutely.
And you can actually see on that third court that there are pickleball lines on that court. We had, as you said, Jamie had kind of led the charge on that. And we did paint pickleball lines, and there was a partnership with the Pickleball Association, and they had so many members that were joining. But as you said, the appetite was not there to play outside. And it was a failure, but it didn't work out the way we hoped. Along, so, yeah.
Any other questions from council? So thank you for the presentation. How we don't make decisions the same night we see the presentation, so this will come back to council. This gives us time to kind of digest this. If we have more questions, we'll reach out.
Yes, please.
And we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, well done.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to council on any topics today? Hearing none. We'll go down to the next item, which is the minutes for the January 27th, 2020 council meeting. And before you, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, we will declare the minutes approved. And before I forget, Mrs. Porter-Lowe is away. And so we are very fortunate to have Amanda here, Amanda Shoup, doing all the important stuff, really. So thank you to Amanda, who helped set up the projector and do all the heavy lifting for us today. So thank you. I know you're so excited to be here. Our next item is a presentation. We have a Built Heritage Award to the Family Service Association of Western Nova Scotia. And I'm going to ask Mr. Peter Oikle if he would like to come down to the podium and start the presentation off, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mitchell. Members of council, staff, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure this evening to make this announcement. The Bridgewater Built Heritage Award was started 6 years ago to recognize owners in the town who have maintained or have restored a historically significant building. This award started as a joint venture by the Heritage Advisory Committee and the Bridgewater Museum Commission and is presented annually. And a representative of both groups consults, Wayne and I did that this year, and selects a building that has seen significant restoration and care to preserve our built heritage. This year, the recipient is the Family Service Association of Western Nova Scotia, and the organization and its executive director, Art Fisher, have restored an iconic King Street building to reflect a facade reminiscent of years gone by. By creating a professional space on the first floor and housing on the upper floors, they've restored this building that will enhance the downtown. And further, they have ensured that it will also be an energy-efficient space. And I believe, Art, you told me that it's about a 75% R value in the walls. Wish my home did for that. This building has had a long history as part of our downtown. Built circa 1899, the original was the site of the William V. Andrews store. Emmanuel Franck, a local merchant, had also been an owner, and in 1907, Noble Crouse bought the property and began renting to Nathan Cohen. Cohen ran a dry goods store and offered men's clothing. One could also purchase from his line of steamer trunks and suitcases at his shop. In 1911, James Power bought the building and continued renting to Cohen. In 1914, Edson Kaiser had completed renovations upstairs and opened the Panama boarding house. By 1919, Kaiser had begun construction of a new building on Pleasant Street, which he called the Queen Hotel. And in 1923, the building was purchased by Captain Daniel D. Meisner, a Bridgewater resident who owned other buildings in town and traveled abroad regularly. The connection with Daniel Meisner is that his home was Harlan Wyon's home, which we recognized a few years ago with the Built Heritage Award as well. Mohammed Rofi, known more by the name Hermie, assumed occupancy in the 1930s and became a mainstay of the downtown. 3 generations of Rofi men ran the men's clothing store until it closed in 2018. Sitting vacant for some time, the Family Service Association of Western Nova Scotia took ownership with plans to restore and begin operating from this site. The observer will note the detail on the street facade, which reflects a past time and could have been found on other buildings of the early years of commercial growth in our town. The decorative corbels were cut out of Lunenburg and then assembled on site. The dental moldings on the facade enhance the historical look as well. That corner doorway features a large door that retains the original look. The renewal of the corner was made even more prominent by extending the angled architectural feature back to the ground floor to include the corner entry and by reincorporating the trim work to bring focus to that chamfered edge. At one time, this building had recessed balconies, which added to the visual features. These have been covered over in past renovations, and the new facade represents windows which will allow light into these rooms. Energy efficiency, 2/2 windows on the first floor, create a sense of expanse and allow light into the rooms and maintain a historical look. So as part of the program that we initiated 6 years ago, we're very pleased this evening to present this award and on behalf of the town, and I'll ask our mayor to do that, and our chairman of the Heritage Advisory Committee, Cheryl Fougier. And Art, if you would come forward, and I think if there are members of your board, would they please stand? Come on up. And you have some staff as well, I believe, with you. So,
Corey, come on.
don't be shy. I believe we're seeing such a fantastic addition to the downtown in terms of its look and the work that they've done. And I think if you follow what they're planning next, it even gets more so. Art, come on in. Come on with me.
Oh, that's
Chairman?
fine, you grabbed.
That's why here's the act.
This is just for you.
Just for you, Art.
This tape has never been here before. This is for you.
Can you pose for that, Cheryl?
I'll stand in the way.
Are you going to be in there? Okay, ready?
Art? Future citation.
Special place.
Thank you. Right? Wonderful.
Would you like to say a few words?
Do I get to?
Yes, you do. You want to at the podium?
Sure.
This is a very meaningful moment, and so I want to thank the council for this and thank the Heritage Advisory Committee for this decision. I think all my life what heritage buildings have, why they've struck me the most is not only the history and the relationships with who worked there and who owned it. What strikes me about our built heritage the most is the incredible amount of labor, often the labor of love by the trades that went into these buildings over and over and over and over again, repairing them and keeping them going and keeping them free of floods and so on. And I always look at heritage with a great sense of wanting to honor the trades and what the trades mean to the continuation of a community. And also, I think it's significant for moving forward today. We have quite a theme going tonight. I was listening to, about the bees, which is a very painful subject. I was thinking we have to realize that we really can't go forward globally unless we do go forward with a sustainability plan that includes development that is financially viable and also socially viable and environmentally viable. It's one of the reasons that we made this building up to R75 and some of the walls where we could in the attics, and because we need to look at how we have a sustainable tomorrow. Also, I just think that one of the things I'd like to honor is the fact that through multiple levels of government funding, site remediation, which is another feature of heritage work, I think it's a feature of heritage work we often don't talk about, is that buildings like 629 and 641 King often require a considerable amount of remediation and demolition in order for them to move forward with any kind of future. And so actually between those two buildings, that's going to amount to an investment on King Street of over $250,000 just to do the remediation, just to make them viable, which is a reason why we often, I think, don't see developers deal with brownscape spaces. They move to greenscape spaces where there's no need to do that. So I think that's a wonderful contribution that we've been able to bring to this town in terms of investment. I think also, I think for me, the crowning piece of all of this is that I think, to come back to the trades, any community, the quality of the buildings depends on those people, and they're often the people that don't get recognized or even become visible in a community. So for us, one of the passionate things that's come out of this is the establishment of Level Up Construction Company. So Level Up is a construction company that is now licensed as a community interest corporation in Nova Scotia. Level Up's commitment is to help youth who are experiencing multiple barriers to education and employment move forward with trades education and trades employment. And it's been quite moving to see how quickly youth can move forward in life with those kinds of very pragmatic supports. You know, I think our helping professions sometimes think that, you know, people need years of some version of talk therapy. And, you know, sometimes talk therapy doesn't really help if you don't have a place to live and you don't have a job. So there's often very pragmatic reasons why that's wonderful to move forward with. So we're very excited to look at how we, in these projects, do something that's sustainable on all those levels, sustainable for the community and the people who are a part of the community and their futures, sustainable environmentally, and sustainable in terms of profit making. And how we do that through supporting the youth of this town in building their own affordable housing. And to me, that's just kind of cool. And so, thank you. This is a wonderful piece to take away from what at times was a rather exasperating kind of like year and a half.
Just as a final comment, we're entering Heritage Week in Canada, and that's why we chose this evening for this presentation. So, and we hope to see you all Thursday night.
Yes.
Okay.
At the museum.
At the museum.
And to check out that new space.
That new space.
That Councillor Thorman has done a remarkable job at letting the public know every couple of weeks when we have council.
Yes.
So well.
Thank you, Mayor Mitchell and Council.
Thank you very much. Congratulations again. Our next item is under reports and recommendations. Recommendation of the Municipal Joint Service Board Safety and Procurement Shared Service Proposal, and I'll turn that over to our CAO to explain to the public and our viewers and walk us through it.
Okay. There's actually two. The first one, the Safety and Procurement Shared Services Proposal, is a recommendation that's coming forward from the Joint Services Board to Council. And what is being recommended is that Council give consideration to the addition of 2 new services to the Joint Services Board, one being procurement and one being safety services. So attached with the report is a budget that kind of notes the financial implications of the services in terms of cost. For procurement, it's recognized that municipalities are required to abide by complex procurement acts and trade agreements that require that you have someone who's trained and competent in the field of procurement. And municipalities we do our own procurement now, so it's not a question of capacity in terms of qualifications. It's a question of capacity in terms of time to provide the level of service that's required, given the number of requests for proposals and tenders that we do. And the other municipal units within the Joint Services Board are faced with the same dilemma. that we're required to meet increasing requirements with these trade agreements. And we're doing more complex procurement. An example would be our waste disposal contract that we just did, our insurance proposals that we did. And both those were done by the Joint Services Board because they were complex, but there was also opportunities for regional to procure on a larger scale and perhaps get better pricing when we do that. And so what the board is proposing is that we look at the inclusion of procurement as a service and bring in that qualification, that level of skill that's required to do that. So this person would do high-level procurement for the municipalities, not everything that we buy, but the high-level stuff. They would also be involved in assisting with contract negotiation, because often when you do proposal calls or tenders, the result is a contract that has to be negotiated for the purchase of a good or a service. They would assist with developing policies and guidelines, purchasing policies, RFP templates, tender templates, all with best practices involved in it. And they would also be responsible for looking for opportunities to collaborate with purchasing and perhaps get better deals of doing that. They would be knowledgeable about timing for going to tenders and proposal calls. They'd understand the market and they'd understand competition within the market. And those are the skill sets that are being proposed for this position. The cost for this position is noted in your report as well. So for procurement, the total expense is $109,474. So that's with the Joint Services Board, and we'd be about, I think, around 45% of that cost to do that. And that would include all of the overhead allocations, so administrative support, the procurement officer themselves, and other office expenses. So it's proposed that the town's cost of that would be $47,074 for that service. The next service that's being proposed by the Joint Services Board is safety. Municipalities, we're employers. We're required to follow the Occupational Health and Safety Act and ensure that we have a safety program, safe work procedures, and a whole system of inspections in place for our workplace. And it's a challenge for municipalities to do that. It's a risk for municipalities. Our public works is a big one in particular. And in addition to just our office environment, but we have wastewater, water treatment in our whole public works environment. And the other partners within the Joint Services Board do as well. So this is proposed as an officer position that would assist in coordinating that safety component within the municipalities and ensure that we're meeting the Occupational Health and Safety Act and regulations, that we have those policies in place, that safe work practices are in place, that they're being reviewed on an annual basis, that your hazard assessments and your inspections are being done. And they would work closely with the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee as well as our directors and our employees in ensuring that that's put in place. This would have, I believe it's proposed that this position wouldn't start till midway through the year. And for that reason, the total expense for 2020-21 would be $54,449. A full year, that would be almost $109,000 for all expenses in for that position as well. So in terms of cost for the town of Bridgewater, you'd be looking at $22,324 for next year, and then for a full year, you're around $45,000 for that particular service. And procurement, as I mentioned, it was $47,000. Your agreement that created the Joint Services Board requires that the councils approve the addition of new services. So this is being recommended by the board. They did do an initial proposal to the councils to say, did you want us to explore? And we said yes, and so did the other partners. And now this is the detailed proposal that's coming forward, where they believe that this is the best model to provide the service and is therefore being recommended for consideration.
Motion?
Sure, let's put a motion on the floor.
I move the town council for the town of Bridgewater accept the recommendation of the Joint Service Board and approve the addition of the following services to Municipal Joint Services Board Agreement. 1, procurement shared services as Schedule 4, and 2, safety coordinator shared services as Schedule 5 to the Municipal Joint Service Board Agreement. And further, that the town council direct staff to work with the Municipal Joint Service Board to draft the necessary amendments to the Municipal Joint Service Services Agreement to incorporate the services in the Municipal Joint Service Board Agreement.
Thanks. Seconded by Councillor Thorburn. Discussion?
Just briefly, two very important additions to the Joint Service Board, and that is where they belong. We saw with procurement with the waste site, we got a new contract with the service provider for I think it's 4 to 5 years at a reduced cost over our current contract, and I think we had the same results with the insurance. So you're getting people with professional expertise who focus on this stuff, so you get better deals, and more importantly, it's protecting our town.
And I would just add that the whole mission of this is the Joint Services Board is to add services that the three partners, Mahone Bay, Municipality District of Lindbergh, and the Town of Bridgewater use, and share that cost burden across those three entities. And as you said, Councillor McGinnis, to make it more cost effective to our taxpayers. So we must be increasing the number of services offered by the Joint Service Board in order to remain competitive. And so this is another step forward. So I'll certainly be supporting the motion.
Likewise, two great additions.
Councillor Thurman.
Just one question. The Joint Service Board been up and running for quite a while. We had no safety officer all that time? No Occupational Health and Safety Act that we follow?
Yeah, we do follow that internally. It's not centered on anyone's desk. It's kind of in the corner. We have an Occupational Health and Safety Act, and managers are responsible for ensuring that we adhere to that. So we're certainly ensuring that we comply with that, but it is a challenge and a struggle to fit that within your normal work day.
Yeah. So as you're growing, you need an officer to take over what everybody else was doing? To help coordinate it. One of the important pieces here is it's not going to take away the responsibility of a manager to meet the requirements of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. This person will help coordinate that, provide that push, do the research that may be required when you're looking at safe work practices and those types of things, but they're not going to replace the duty of a manager when it comes to that. I didn't mean that. I just asking the question, that's all. Okay. Ready for the question?
I am, yes.
Question call.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Continuing on the theme of Municipal Joint Service Board, we have a revised organization chart. And maybe you can speak to that, please.
The present CEO of the Joint Services Board, Sue, has announced her leave from the Joint Services Board in June of 2020. And with that comes a decision by the board in terms of how they look at replacing this position. The Joint Services Board has had a part-time accountant position in the organization chart, and it's been budgeted for a few years now, and it's 70%, not part-time. But they've had some challenges filling that position. Given the skill set of the present CEO, she's been able to do that role as well as be the CEO of the Joint Services Board. With her retirement and giving the expanded role of the Joint Services Board moving into various different services, it's felt that the CEO that comes in to fill this role needs to be able to focus more on overseeing the operation and ensuring that the services are delivered to the needs of the partners, and that a controller or an accountant type position full-time is required to ensure the financial side of the operation is working well as well. So the recommendation from the board is that we look at a controller or a full-time accountant, so we move from 70% to 30%, and then that would enable the CEO to focus on the oversight and the leadership role that that person would provide to both the organization as well as with the board itself. The impact financially is $35,000 because, as I mentioned, we've already had 70% of those funds within the budget. And so our share of that would be, again, like 45%. So with the safety officer and the procurement function as well as this, our cost for 2020-21 would be close to $97,000.
It's never going to get easier to say 2020,
I know.
2021. I'm saying a bunch of 20s in that.
Motion?
Yes, please.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater accept the recommendation of the Joint Services Board and approve the budget expense required for the 2020-21 budget to reflect the addition of full-time controller to replace 70% part-time account position.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Vergier was first.
Oh, that's good.
Any discussion?
Just briefly, we've been fortunate to have a chief operating officer in Sue Secord who handled 2 or 3 different positions up there. And she has decided to step aside and be sort of semi-retired at the very least. And so it's important that we do this right, because we are doing a lot of good things at the Joint Service Board, and we want to see those continue.
And I kind of look at this position as if Sue wasn't the person in the position now and from the beginning of the MJSB, we would have already had two
Yeah,
positions
you would have.
from the get-go. It was set up to have really 2 positions, but her skill set made it so we didn't. So this is a necessary change with the retirement of Sue. So should be missed, yeah, well, should be missed. For any discussion? Councilor
Just
Irwin?
one thing, this has to go to MODL and to the town of Mahone Bay, unanimous approval. by all
MODL
3.
is addressing this tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a budgetary
Right.
matter,
Right.
and yeah, so they would have to improve that changed, yeah.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
Good.
Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is request for financial support from Now Lunenburg County. With documents attached, they're seeking $900 from the existing, from our economic development budget. They are doing not quite the tour they did last time where they went across the country, but they're going to a medical recruitment event in Ontario, and then going to continue on and do some promotion of Lunenburg County while they're there, taking the trailer again and promoting our region. So there's a request here for financial support, as I said, for $900 from the town of Bridgewater. What is council's wish? Councilor Graves?
I move that town council for the town of Bridgewater approve financial support for Now Lunenburg County for $900 from the existing 2019-2020 economic development budget in support of physician recruitment at the Rural and Remote Medicine Conference.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Frazier. Any further discussion?
You get a doctor for $900.
As a bargain.
Yeah.
I think we should mention that at the meeting that Saunders Motors, I believe, has donated.
Donated the vehicle, correct,
Vehicle
yes.
to haul that trailer, and kudos to Saunders Motors.
Yes, thank you to Saunders Motors and all the other community
No,
partners that are
the
donating
partners
to
as well.
this, because the trip doesn't cost $900.
No.
So there's a lot of people sponsoring this. Any other discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is Lunenburg County Accessibility Advisory Committee 2020-2021 budget. So that is before you. It's kind of self-explanatory.
As a member of that committee, I'll bring the motion forward, Your
Thank you.
Worship. I move the town council for the town of Bridgewater approve the Lunenburg County Accessibility Committee's 2020-2021 budget to develop an accessibility plan, with the town's contribution being $4,071.24 based on 13% uniform assessment.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Frazier. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is the 5 municipalities
Yes.
are on the committee.
Yeah.
So instead of tackling this individually, we are doing this with
Yes.
Town of Lunenburg, Town of Mahone Bay, Chester, Municipality District of Lunenburg, and ourselves.
And I think we need a plan by April 2021.
Yes, next
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
18 months.
Nice to
Any
nice to see the cooperation and the uniform assessment.
Yep. No, that's great. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We seem to have these every week now, these notices for some policy revisions. So just a reminder, because sometimes people wonder why we don't really debate some of these. So this is this next one is just a notice that at a future meeting, we will be discussing a tax collection policy. So someone who's prepared to make that motion? Councilor Graves, please.
I move that town council for the town of Bridgewater give notice pursuant to section 48 of the Municipal Government Act that at February 24th, 2020 council meeting, proposed changes to policy 33, tax collection will be considered to outline requirements and authorities.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Thorburn. Just before anyone wonders what that means, it doesn't mean any, like, we're not, I hear tax collection, and I'm sure people are going, what? How are you coming? No. Do you know, just maybe, just super quick?
It's just basically that the changes are to reflect current practice, so the policy doesn't really reflect that. So one of the big things is the ability of the treasurer to negotiate tax payment options for property owners who may be nearing the tax sale list and need some assistance. Those types of things that is not clear in our existing policy, that's enabled. And we need to make sure that what staff are doing is reflective of council's policy, so yeah,
And money
just
when
stuff like that.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is the REMOS, or Regional Emergency Measures Organization Advisory Committee proposed Comfort Center and Emergency Shelter Procedures. So this kind of came out of getting some more clarity. I'm looking at Councilor Thorburn for some guidance here. After Hurricane Dorian, what's a comfort center? What's an emergency shelter? When should they be enacted? And kind of trying to find some common ground, because I know some people were wondering why some were open, some weren't, why some groups were open overnight, why some were only open at certain times. So this is to kind of get us all on the same page. If you
Yeah, that is correct, and they're quite different. The Comfort Center, you're there during the day, they may provide coffee, meal, charge your cell phones and whatnot, and they're really put on by the different locations that have those centers. But if there's a shelter overnight after the 72 hours, then that's done by REMO, and we have shelters for that. Or if a large emergency took place where we had to evacuate somebody,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think the key is, and there's been some confusion about, not so much, I mean, maybe more with our partners, but about who really drives
authority?
opening a comfort
Yeah.
center, and it's the communities that decide that.
Yeah.
And the emergency center, as you say, REMO would make the request, but Red Cross would be the ones that would come in and operate the emergency shelter, because that's meant for lodging, and you're staying there a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just to bring that clarity to that. The other thing that it did was it came up with some standards. So if
Yes.
you want to be recognized as a comfort center, and when you open, we list you, there are some things that the procedure has, like you must have a generator, you have to be barrier-free, some basic things that the community would expect if they went to a center. And same with an emergency shelter, just some standards that we put in there that provide that assurance if we're listing them as that they meet some minimum standards.
Councilor Graves.
So how many facilities in the town of Bridgewater would meet that criteria? Because the generator's the key, right? And there's I think people were under the understanding that NSCC was a comfort center, but it's...
So their generator only powers a small section of that building.
So we did, that's something that we didn't need to open it up, but it was something that we came to realize that we thought that it had met certain criteria. So we're working on that. To find another place that can be a shelter, because that's a big part of it. Comfort center, we can work with we're trying to work with other community facilities to see if we can find some. And yes, that does involve perhaps helping them secure a generator.
So in town, how many do we have? Is it just the fire hall, Councilor Thurman, or anybody?
Well, the one that we have in town, to my understanding, was always community college.
Yeah.
But like the mayor said, there's only certain parts of that has electricity. But it's in their budget plan, and I think they're kind of looking at moving that forward and trying to get some emergency power there.
Yeah.
If I understand correctly.
And they're REMO's in conversation with another entity
Yeah.
for also becoming a shelter as well. So I don't want to speak to that until that group has made that decision yet, but there are other options being explored.
And the LCLC doesn't have one, right?
There's no generator.
No.
I guess with climate change and everything else, it's important.
Yeah, it's not going to get better.
No, it's not.
Do you want a motion?
Yes, please.
I would so move that the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the REMO Advisory Committee and approve the Comfort Center procedure and the emergency shelter procedure is contained in document 20-031.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Frazier. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we have the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program, their January report. And as always, I would encourage people to take a look at that. And it's always eye-opening. I feel like I'm repeating myself every month that we get these things, but it never ceases to amaze me how many people use this service. So that's there for information for yourselves and for public. The next item is Parks, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Committee, Citizen and Youth Representative Appointment. This is always exciting since this is the committee that has youth representation. And youth are always really busy, so it's great that we have a youth representative coming before us here. So if someone is prepared to make that motion, that would be great. Councillor Frazier?
Yes, Your Worship. I move that Council appoint Leif Helmler as citizen representative to serve on the PRC Advisory Committee for a term effective immediately to October 31st, 2021, and appoint Haiti Tynes to serve as the youth representative for a term effective immediately to August 31st, 2020.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Graves. Any discussion?
Great volunteers.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great volunteers. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And on that same kind of theme, Heritage Advisory Committee citizen appointments. Councillor Thorburn?
I would move that council appoint Shelley Winters as a citizen representative to serve on the Heritage Advisory Committee for a term effective immediately to December 11th, 2020.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you to those volunteers for stepping up. All right, our next item is Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual, Vacation Carry Forwards Wording Change.
Okay.
So just some policy cleanup.
Yeah, so this just reflects, I guess for a few years now, we've had in our auditor's report, our management letter, some concerns with respect to the vacation banks, and we've been working over the last few years at bringing that down. So the policy required that employees couldn't carry over more than 5 days from their date of hire. So 2 years ago, we actually gave them more than that. We gave them till the end of this fiscal year to work on that. And going forward, the carryover will be as per the policy. The recommendation from the finance department is that we use we use fiscal year for the carryover so that everyone is the same instead of tracking it. I guess it gets quite complex with the number of employees to track anniversary date for carryover. It doesn't affect entitlement or anything like that. That all stays with your anniversary date. But on a go-forward basis, it would be based on fiscal year for carryover, so that we would use March 31st as that date of which we would see the days down to 5 for carryover. Employees accrue vacation basically every day they work. Like every month there's a certain allotment, so it doesn't affect accruals or anything like that. It's more about just reducing the liability from our books at year end.
Keeping everybody on the same
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
Someone prepared to make a motion to that effect? Don't everybody jump at once now. Councillor Thorburn.
I will. But before I do, Your Worship, I got to thank our CEO and the past CEOs, because when we tackled this quite a few years ago, there was hundreds and actually literally thousands of hours that was carried over. And I think through some of the audit committee meetings we had that wasn't acceptable. And kudos to our CEO and staff that have now made that more manageable. And it's really a great job, so thank you. And I would move that Town Council of Town of Bridgewater give notice pursuant to Section 48 of the Municipal Government Act that effective February the 24th, 2020 meeting of Town Council proposed changes to the Personnel Policy and Procedures Manual will be considered to change the language with respect to vacation carry forwards.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. Yes, so this is notice of this coming back to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Next item is for information, departmental quarterly reports. And similarly to Councillor Thorburn thanking the CAO and staff for the previous item, I'd like to thank managers and the CAO for this. This is new to us, these quarterly reports.
Yes.
I know it adds time to your busy schedules, but I found it a really great read because we don't always hear everything that the departments are doing. We hear from planning when planning's here, we hear from engineering when engineering's here, and when these topics hit. But some of these topics are, they take some time before they get to us, or they've been with us and then we've moved on. So I found the reports to be really great information. I'm sure council feels the same. So I look forward to these.
Quarterly.
Quarterly. The title's genius. So if you have any questions, I would encourage you to, through the CAO, email your questions, and she will get the answers from the managers as required. Our next item is business arising unfinished business. We have a vacant position for the board of the Western Regional Housing Authority. Another volunteer. What is council's wish? Councillor Graves.
I move that town council for the town of Bridgewater recommend Angie Brown as a nominee for the town's representative on the board of the Western Regional Housing Authority.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McGuinness.
Thank you.
Another,
Yeah. Love them.
Yeah. Great. Any further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And our last item is, again, a notice to propose changes to the Policy 96, which is the Bridgewater Facade Improvement Program. And this came out of a discussion council had a few weeks ago, months ago. Time seems to fly. So this is, again, something that will come back to the next council meeting. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thurman.
Okay. I would move that town council for the town of Bridgewater give notice pursuant to Section 48 of the Municipal Government Act. And then at the February 24th, 2020 council meeting, amendments to Policy 96 Facade Improvement Program will be considered to restrict signage eligibility to 25% funding to a maximum of $500 and to limit the number of applications to one property ID per physical year except corner lots where two public facades, and to remove Appendix B and C.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We have an in-camera meeting that will be in this room. And before we adjourn, I want to thank Pat Hurdle for. I'm hearing a lot of great positive feedback about our current streaming setup. And so as we try every single way possible to reach the public and make sure we're accessible, I know he's put a lot of effort into this, and he kind of hides behind it. So I do want to thank Patrick for this. And also, I just want to say again to Maddox and Eric, those two young gentlemen that gave the presentation in the bees. Oh, yeah. I love when young people come and speak with such confidence, especially when it's something environmental or socially important like that. So hats off to Maddox and Eric for their presentation. And can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Thorburn, seconded by Councillor Graves. We are adjourned. Thank you.